Nicaragua is gearing up for its general elections this Sunday, in a climate that voters describe as peaceful. Chilean President Sebastián Piñera announced this Tuesday that he will ask the Congress to extend the state of emergency in force in 4 provinces in the south of the country. Ethiopia's cabinet on Tuesday declared a nationwide state of emergency after Tigrayan rebels seized 2 crucial towns on their way towards the capital. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. On November the 7th, the people of Nicaragua will go for the polls for the general elections. Political parties have been campaigning since September and are now making the final preparations ahead of the vote. Our correspondent, Maria Jose Diaz, brings us more details in the atmosphere in the Nicaraguan capital with just a few days to go before the elections.
This is how the streets of Managua look like. There's no stopping. Jessica works as a cook in this food stand. She says the political environment reflects tranquility, only less than a week away from the November 7th elections. It's better this way because sometimes these things go on in the neighborhoods. People fight over which party should win and like that. It's best all of this is played down quietly. The governing party, Frente Sandinista, continues to carry out social programs that have been acknowledged by several international organisms to favor development in the most vulnerable sectors of the country.
Frente Sandinista is going to show its organizational ability in the upcoming elections. Plus, the majority vote that the population will give the ruling party is based on the fact that this has been a government who has responded to the needs of the Nicaraguan citizens.
Despite the participation of the opposing political parties in these polls, the media campaign that the government's rivals conduct in several platforms and the November 7th boycott, analyst Rodolfo Pastrán confirms that the opposition's speech is the same they used in 2018 as a sabotage strategy against that year's electoral process.
Breaking the country, damaging the economy, sinking it so the people feel badly and turns against the government. That's the plan. Always resting a shoulder on the United States and the European Union and the OAS. That's why this group is going to do, every day getting smaller and smaller and isolating themselves.
The majority of the Nicaraguan people ask for respect towards the country's institutions. We ask that our decisions be respected. This choice that the Nicaraguans make in voting for any candidate we want, we just want that to be respected. On November 7, almost 4.5% of Nicaraguans will vote for the presidential formula, with 92 lawmakers and 20 representatives to the Central American Parliament.
María José Díaz, TeleSUR, Nicaragua.
Thank you, Maria Jose, for this report. Now we continue to other topics because Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry on Tuesday condemned the looting and burning of a hospital in the north of the country, describing it as a barbaric act. The Prime Minister stated that such acts seek to sow anarchy in the country and endanger the lives of people and the property. Henry announced that he had instructed the authorities to investigate and prosecute those responsible. On Monday, armed men entered the Sacred Heart Hospital in the city of Milot, smashing everything in their path and threatening staff before setting fire to the facility. The fire consumed the laboratory and the patient records. In Honduras, opposition forces have protested against the National Electoral Council's refusal to accept their candidacies ahead of the November 28th general elections. Our correspondent, Gilda Silvestrucci, brings us the details.
For the people at the front end of the decision, there is no loophole or bylaw that gives the National Electoral Council the power to refuse the opposition's Roberto Contreras as a candidate for township.
We've been the target of a slander campaign, of heresy, of all sorts and offenses against our dignity ever since this political project took off. but we thought that the tentacles of the Liberal and the National parties wouldn't reach the Supreme Electoral Institution, that is the National Electoral Council. Sadly, up until this moment, we have never heard of any reason for this. We haven't been notified nor seen any official statements from the National Electoral Council.
Roberto Contreras is the runner-up representing three political forces that add to a majority of supporters in the electoral process. Therefore, the refusal to admit Contreras as a candidate is seen as a desperate measure from the ruling party. It is an action taken to stop a candidate that has all the odds in his favor, who can beat the National Party in San Pedro Sula. This is like telling the people of Honduras that they have made a decision, even though what the people of Honduras want is for them to leave power. The forms of candidacy weren't signed only for San Pedro Sula. They are also valid for the capital. But only in San Pedro Sula are two of the three electoral magistrates refusing the inscription of an opposition candidate. It only T-minus 27 days to elections. This measure from the National Electoral Council results in the beginning of government actions that could aggravate the current process. The opposition leaders in the Central American country think the government wants to destabilize the whole process, to create chaos and invalidate elections.
The National Party has boycotted this process since the beginning, and they won't stop until they get to the day of the balloting. The first challenge is to get to November 28th, to guarantee the process, because the National Party has done all in its power to stop this advance.
The National Electoral Council's authorities are bound by law to upset the alliance petition of the three opposing political forces. These requests were presented in proper time and fashion.
Hilda Silvestrucci, TeleSUR Honduras.
Thank you, Gilda, for this report, and we'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. On November 21st, Venezuelans will elect over 3,000 regional and local government officials. The National Electoral Council is moving forward with the preparations, and in the streets, citizens are clear about what they want from their candidates. Our correspondent, Andre Vieira, brings us more details on how the electoral campaign is unfolding in the following report.
The National Electoral Council presented this Monday the Media Monitoring Room, which will accompany the programming during the campaign for the regional and municipal elections of next November 21st. The objective is to guarantee a balanced coverage, which values the diversity of opinions and guarantees the necessary space required. We become the prosecutors of the campaign process that is on the way. As our first responsibility, it is up to us. Margarita Mirter, who works in the Petare neighborhood in Caracas, is one of the 21 million people eligible to vote and reveals her expectations for the campaign.
We want a better country, we want it to be fixed, and we want it to be for the people.
With less than 3 weeks to go before the elections of 3,082 candidates, the people in the streets are pointing out the path that the candidates must follow. It is necessary that each governor or each mayor go to the houses to know the needs of the people.
I would like proposals to be made so that we have a change when the pandemic is over and there is progress and an income for all mothers and all families.
All political parties in Venezuela are participating in these elections, including those who supported the coercive sanctions against the country. These aggressions are also on the voters' minds. People are suffering the consequences of the blockade. Gasoline is being cut off, ships are being hijacked, monomers are being stolen, which were intended for social work. But since they have blocked us, things get more complicated. The 70,000 candidates have until November 18 to present their proposals to more than 21 million voters. It is the future of the states and municipalities of Venezuela that is at stake.
André Vieri, José Rondón, TeleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
Thank you, Andre, for this report. Now we continue. Chilean President Sebastián Piñera announced this Tuesday that he will ask the Congress to extend a state of emergency in force in 4 provinces of the south of the country. A week after the second extension of the measure expired, the president indicated that the decree will be extended until November 11th. The request requires congressional approval. Piñera claimed that the objective is to reduce acts of violence, but indigenous Mapuche communities stress the militarization of the area seeks to quash the legitimate protests for land rights and to reject illegal mining activities on their territories.
I would also like to announce today, with the same objective, that I am sending Congress a request to extend the state of emergency that is currently in force in the provinces of Biobío and Arauco in the Biobío region, and Malleco and Cautín in the La Araucanía region. In this state of emergency, and I want to make this very clear, the armed forces do not replace the police, but the decree does not allow the armed forces to provide support to the police.
November 1st and the 2nd are regarded by Mexicans as highly meaningful dates. Across the country, families honor their dead with shrines and tributes. Our correspondent, Eduardo Martinez, brings us more details on this deep-rooted tradition.
In memory of their dead, Mexican families put up shrines and offerings where they place the photos of their loved ones, who, according to the folktales, will come and visit them from the great beyond.
These days, the doors of the underworld opens and the souls come out. They are allowed then to come and see their family.
Worshippers embellish the spirits' altars and welcome them with a glass of water, since the dead come a long way and are probably thirsty. Food and a beverage of heavier sorts that was enjoyed in the deceased's life is also presented, along with some of his or her belongings.
Mexicans have that spark, that part of being able to laugh at death and honor it in such a beautiful, colorful way, even though it is a sad thing.
There are spectacular offerings in public squares. The cempasúchil flower is one of the leading characters and accompanies the skulls. The one set up in front of the National Art Museum is dedicated to the dead by COVID-19. Other altars are set up to remember the victims of gender violence. Feminist groups honor Dina Ochoa, a lawyer for different social causes, who was murdered 2 decades ago.
20 years after her execution, there is no justice. The Mexican state tried to portray her death as a suicide, for example, and she was a comrade who mainly defended the working class people.
Artists from different styles work on performances for the Day of the Dead or All Saints' Day. At the cloister of Sor Juana, Antonio Lopez shows a modern interpretation of the fall of the great Tenochtitlan, where the main elements are the nopal cactus and the eagle devouring a serpent, the same elements that appear in the national coat of arms. Here I pay homage to all of them who formed the nation we are today, and what I'm trying to do is to merge this same symbol into a single one, and to be that primary force to place us as a new Mexico. This is one of the most deeply rooted traditions of this town that, like no other, knows how to celebrate death and make it one of the key elements of its cultural heritage.
Eduardo Martínez, TeleSUR, Ciudad de México.
Now we address other topics. Moving on to the COP26 Climate Change Conference, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brownie, highlighted the disastrous consequences of climate change for his country as an economy based on tourism.
Of the consequences of climate change, we're seeing more frequent and ferocious storms. We would have seen ocean acidification and the destruction of our coral reefs, and even the coastline in some instances. We're losing our beaches. And as you know, most of our economies are tourism-based. And when you lose your beaches, you lose your tourism. So it's a very significant threat for those of us on the front lines.
And we have more news coming up after the final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back from the South. Ethiopia's cabinet on Tuesday declared a nationwide state of emergency after Tigrayan rebels seized two crucial towns on their way towards the capital. According to Fana Broadcasting Corporate, a state-owned mass media company operating in Ethiopia, the state of emergency was issued to protect civilians from the violent acts committed by the Tigray People's Liberation Front in several parts of the country. In recent days, the TPLF has claimed control of over two cities about 400 kilometers from Addis Ababa and has not ruled out marching on the capital, which has so far not seen any fighting. On Tuesday, the executive director of the World Food Programme, David Beasley, expressed his concern about the situation in Tigray, Ethiopia, and estimates that 5.2 million people are in need of emergency food assistance.
The Tigray northern region of Ethiopia is a disaster. We're not able to get our trucks in. We're not able to get our fuel in. We're not even able to get our cash in to pay the people we need to pay. I don't know how people are not dying. They have to be dying at unprecedented numbers. But we can't get the access we need. There's an ongoing conflict. All sides are creating issues for us. And it's a disgrace. It absolutely is a disgrace what's going on in Ethiopia. We need to be moving 100 trucks a day, 30 just for food. 100 because that involves medicines and supplies of all other humanitarian needs. But just the food security alone is 30 trucks a day. We're not even getting 10% of that in.
Also, the executive director, David Beasley, indicated the new food crisis in Afghanistan.
So Afghanistan is truly a crisis. And you run into the issue of donors do not want to be seen as in any way aiding or abetting or supporting the Taliban. And as we've talked to the Taliban, we need complete operational independence, and so far we've gotten that. We operate in war zones, complex environments. We know how to deliver food in a very neutral, impartial way that assures donors that the food is getting to the intended beneficiaries. When we can't do that, we shut down operations and make the changes necessary. Afghanistan is a challenge in many ways, but reaching the people in an independent way, knowing that the food gets to the people, is not a problem for us. We're able to do that. So we need for the donors that don't in any way harm the future of the innocent victims, of the innocent people in Afghanistan. Give us the money so that we can reach the people. Otherwise, you're going to have starvation, of course. You're going to have mass migration.
Now we address other topics. The director of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on Tuesday backed broad use of Pfizer's and BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccines in children. The Food and Drug Administration last week green-lighted the emergency use of kid-sized doses for children ages 5 to 11, just a third of the amount given to teens and adults. The announcement comes hours after the advisors to the U.S. CDC unanimously supported the move, saying the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risk. Shots into little arms could begin this week, as Pfizer already is packing and shipping the first orders, millions of doses to states and pharmacies to be ready.
COVID-19 vaccine, which is 2 doses of 10 micrograms given IM, be recommended for children 5 through 11 years of age under an emergency use authorization.
So we have a total of 14 yeses, 0 no's, and so the motion passes, and the interim recommendation is now a recommendation by the ACIP.
Should vaccination with the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, which is 2 doses of 10 micrograms given IM, be recommended for children 5 through 11 years of age under an emergency use authorization?
So we have a total of 14 yeses, 0 no's, and so the motion passes, and the interim recommendation is now a recommendation by the ACIP.
Should vaccination with the...
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.